you help me to get that? You say, no, no, you shouldn't want this. You want something else. No, no, this is what I want, right? So can you help me get that? So this is where God reaches out to us where we are. If you see the series of verses, is 719 is the last, 716 to 719 is a series of verses. And Krishna talks about people who approach him. So it starts with people who approach him, and then ultimately people who surrender to him. So approaching is just first step. Surrender is the, you could say, the final step, where they understand Krishna is the ultimate reality. So when we talk about this stage, for all of us, we want to achieve certain things in life, and while we are trying to achieve these things, there are certain roadblocks, certain obstacles. Hmm? And we would like to have those obstacles removed. In general, that is one of the main reasons why uh, people pray to God, go to God. No, this issue is not being solved, that problem is not being solved. And so, this is also a valid and valuable way for turning toward God. So, spiritual life itself, I will expand the meaning of what spiritual life means. But at this stage, spiritual life, we can say it starts with meaning that we are connecting with the spiritual reality, that is God. Hmm. Now, in the West and in westernized parts of the world, even in India also, see, in the past, for people, mostly the obstacles were external. So in Christianity, there's the prayer, "Oh Father, thou art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, give us our daily bread." Now there's one American Christian. He said, maybe we should change this prayer. He said, maybe just give us our daily butter. Why? Because bread is very easily available. So for most people, especially in the Western and relatively prosperous parts of the world, most people don't really have anxiety for bread, right? So in the past, we could say, mm, so in the past, the vision of God as a cosmic supplier. Hmm? That means it is God who is providing us our needs. In the past, people lived closer to nature. So we knew that we need grains, and grains come from rains, and we can't control rains. So we depend on God. That understanding was there. Now also we are actually dependent on nature, but we don't realize that we are so much dependent on nature. Because okay, even if rains are not there, we'll create some irrigation, we'll import food from here, we'll do this from there. So we have tried to create a lot of material measures for fixing material problems, irrespective of how effective they are. The point is that most people don't really feel the need for God to get their daily bread. Most people, there are of course a lot of people who are starving, and that is still there. But for most people, the idea of God as the cosmic supplier does not have that much resonance. Hmm. But you will see that meditation, chanting, praying, spirituality, these are still making a resurgence, not only a presence, but a resurgence. I was in Australia a few years ago, and there was an interfaith panel discussion I was invited to. And the topic of that discussion was shocking. They told me the topic, I was taken aback. But then I understood where the topic has come from. The topic was, why has God not died till now? Now, what does that mean? It's like, how can you have, even if the ordinary person, you will ask, why has this person not died till now? We won't say like that. So, what was the reasoning over there? Hmm. Their idea was that since science started taking off, hmm, the idea among some rationalists was that God is a pre-scientific myth, and as science advances, belief in God will decrease. In fact, there was a German philosopher, Friedrich Nietzsche, who famously said that God is dead. Now, he is often misunderstood. When he said God is dead, he did not see it in a celebratory mood. He basically said that the rationale for believing in God that people had in the past, science has removed that. Now, that is not actually true, but that was the conception at that time. So, their idea was that as science increases, God, actually, faith in God decreases. So, when they say, why has God not died till now? Implicit in that idea is that God is a fiction. God is a fiction, and belief in this fiction will die as science increases. But science and technology are progressing, but all over the world, you're finding that religion, faith in God, are turning towards some higher reality that is not dying out. In fact, if you consider religion is having a resurgence in communist Russia, religion was systematically suppressed. But as soon as communism fell, now various religions are growing rapidly. At one time, the Time magazine reported that the Hare Krishnas are the fastest growing religion in Russia. Mm. So, similarly, of course, now we may say that religion has some extremist expressions and all that is true. That's a separate problem. But the fact is that religion is nowhere near dying. Africa is quite religious, Middle East is religious. India will see that religion is having a resurgence. Mm. America, from India, we think of America as Hollywood and those things, and that is true. But in the Western world, America is the most religious country. That America is far more religious than UK or Russia, UK or China, sorry, UK or Australia or New Zealand or Canada. It's significantly religious. So the point is that now I will talk about the difference between religion and spirituality as we move forward. But if we consider spirituality as a turning towards some reality beyond the material, some reality beyond the material, then whether it is through traditional religion or through something else, people are turning towards that. You could say people are not just turning towards that, returning towards that. People were connected to that. So this is from a sociological perspective a puzzle, and people are still trying to figure out: is it that people don't believe in science? Is it that we are not giving science education enough? Now, of course, if we go truly by science, the science is a tool for looking at reality. Hmm? And science itself can neither prove nor disprove the existence of God. Hmm? Science can point us towards some higher reality. When I was in England, I was invited to Cambridge to speak on science and spirituality. So we passed by the area, and the tree is supposed to be still there, where under which Newton discovered gravity. Some of your children may know this story. That the Newton, what happened? Some people say the apple fell in front of him. Some people say it fell on him. The apple fell on him. And now, when the apple fell, what happened? Newton asked the question. What question did he ask? Yeah, what made the apple fall? Now, Newton believed in God. So, now he believed in God, but at that time he was not looking for God as the explanation for the apple fall. He wanted to understand the mechanism by which the apple fell. And he came up with the idea of gravity. So that place is like the tree particularly is like a pilgrimage place for scientists. They go there and appreciate the brilliance of Newton in coming up with that theory of gravity. Now, that's perfectly fine. So if we consider here, okay, there is the event of the apple falling. Visible, okay, apple fell. Now, we could say that why did the apple fall? It is because of gravity. And now we could say ultimately nothing happens without God. So the apple would not exist, the tree would not exist, Newton would not exist, Earth would not exist without God. So that is true. So now the point is science offers us explanations at a particular level. That is, science basically looks for material explanations for material phenomena. Now, are there some other explanations? Are there some other phenomena? Maybe there are, but that is not the concern of science. This particular approach is called as methodological naturalism. While going through, I challenge you to translate this. It's not audible. Oh, really? Oh, okay. No, no. So those who don't understand Telugu, you are being remarkably patient. Maybe if you want, I don't know. Maybe you can go in another room and yeah, because if they can't understand, then we don't want to. Is there another room available where? Okay, but the screen is going to be anyway in English only. I'm writing there. So.
ఎంతమంది ఉన్నారమ్మా అసలు అర్థం కావట్లేదు అనుకున్న వాళ్ళు ఇంగ్లీష్ లో అర్థం కావట్లేదు అనుకున్న వాళ్ళు చేయొచ్చండి. So we'll continue like this then? Yes, so we'll continue like this.
So almost everybody understands. Those who don't understand are happy to not understand also. So, not too much trouble for the brain. So anyway, the point I'm making is science itself looks for material explanations for material phenomena. Now beyond this is called as methodological naturalism. There's a technical word for it. You don't have to get into that too much. But the point is, within science, whether there are phenomena beyond the material, whether there are explanation for phenomena beyond the material, that is outside the scope of science. So now, from this observation, some people can infer the existence of God, some people can infer the non-existence of God. And an argument can be had whose inference is more reasonable. But science is not like an undiscovered satellite around Jupiter. What I mean by that is, it's not that in future by any particular telescope or any kind of scope, suddenly we're going to discover, sorry, not science, God. God is not like an undiscovered satellite around Jupiter. That, oh, we make some scientific advancement and then we'll find God over there. No, God is by definition spiritual. So the point is that science, the hope was that through science and technology, so the hope, the expectation was through science, belief in God will decrease. And through technology, a need for God will decrease. That was the expectation. Both will decrease. Need means, like in the past, if there is no rains, we pray to God for rains. We don't have things, we will pray to God. But now we turn to a technology. Technology will provide for us. Sorry. Artificial rains and things like that we'll try to create. So this was the overall expectation. But somehow this expectation has not been fulfilled. And it's a sociological puzzle. So there are many people who have come up with different explanations for this. But one of the key things is that when people turn toward meditation, when people towards prayer, now yoga is having a huge resurgence in the world. In the West, it was already there. Even in China, it was there. China, actually, now in India also, since the World Yoga Day was celebrated and popularized, India is also its big time now. So essentially, what has happened in today's world, we may not have any. Some of you can come here. Actually, we can remove this. We can sit here also. We don't need this here. కొందుగా కూర్చోదు. At the level of the mind, despite having technological advancement, people are finding that the mind is more restless, the mind is more agitated, the mind is more disturbed. And while there are some scientific methods for dealing with mental health problems, take some pills, do this, do that, but one of the most reliable ways, time tested ways of calming the mind, of freeing the mind of the things that agitate us, is turning towards spirituality, turning towards some higher reality, connecting with that higher reality. So, in New York Times, there was the idea of how God is now seen not so much as a cosmic supplier, but as a cosmic therapist. That means I don't need to go to God for give me bread, but give me peace of mind. Isn't it? And that need is not so easily fulfilled. So when I say here I'm going to speak in some company, Salesforce, Microsoft, or in America I go and speak in Intel, Google. Now those companies are not interested in God. They're not even interested in the soul so much. But they still invite speakers like me to come and speak because science itself has found, many studies show that people who are a little more spiritual, who have some spiritual practices, their health is better, physical health is better, their mental health is better. And from their perspective, then people perform better. Their health bills are lesser and people's performance is higher. So, even from the perspective of what you want to achieve, having a spiritual dimension to your life will help people to achieve what they want to achieve. So the first stage is augmenting. Augmenting means that it will add strength or resources for pursuing what we think is worth pursuing. So in this sense, that if what happens if somebody has, if we from here, somebody has spiritual practices, they have spirituality as a part of their life. And the result of that is when they want to pursue something, this obstacle that is there inside, that becomes relatively smaller. And then it's even smaller, and they can just walk over it or push it over, and people can become better at pursuing their goals, even if those goals are material. So at the first level, spiritual, whatever we want to achieve in our life, that we can achieve better if we have spirituality as a part of our life. So this is basically a variant of, in the Vedic tradition, this is called Karma Kanda. Karma Kanda is we worship God for material things. Now here it is not physical things, it is more of mental things. We want peace of mind. And this is something which anybody who practices a bit of spirituality can experience that. So a student wants to study and do better in the exams, they'll find that they do some meditation, they do some mantra chanting, They'll find their mind will be calmer. They'll be able to concentrate better. And in this world itself, we can experience the benefits while pursuing what we consider desirable. And most of the teachers in the world who are currently popular and are considered spiritual teachers, they focus primarily on this level only. They'll give some motivational talks and they'll talk about adding a little spirituality to your life. So in this case, what happens is spirituality is more like a tonic. Hmm? I am healthy, but I just want more energy. Then we take a tonic for that. So spirituality is a tonic in this case. So the idea is that, okay, what I am pursuing is what I want to pursue, but spirituality can help me to do that. And this is also a perfectly acceptable level, in the sense that from this level, most people will begin. What was the acronym I was going to discuss? Anyone remembers? ACT. So A was what? Augmenting. And what we are doing, we can do it better. And C is complementing. What is the meaning of complement? Sorry? Yes. So here complementing means, say if you want 90 degrees, you want 60 degrees, you add 30 more degrees and complement. So complement means basically completing. That's one simple way of putting it. So it's adding, but adding so that it completes. So in this understanding, what happens is, say I have something which I consider desirable, and spirituality reveals to me that there is something more also which is desirable. So spirituality reveals to me that apart from what I'm pursuing, there is something else that is desirable in my life. So for most people, say, so in general, when people are say 15 to, I mean 15 is very young, but when people are about age of 20, 25, 30, 35, at that time they all want to achieve something big in their life. And at that time, augmenting is what will appeal to them for most people. Now, but once people get 35, 40, 45, they settle down a little bit in life and they have achieved some level of career, then they start realizing that, okay, what I thought will make me happy has is not really making me happy. Or maybe it's making me happy, but it's not making me as happy as I thought it would make me. So this is where we start thinking, is there something more to life? So yes, I want wealth, I want a good house, I want family, I want power, I want this, I want that. Those things I still want. It's not that at this point those desires have gone away. Those desires may still be there, but one starts realizing that actually this is the key insight for a person to turn towards spirituality. Fulfilling desires, it does not lead to fulfillment of the heart. I have desires and I fulfill those desires. And I worked hard, I got what I thought was desirable so that I could fulfill it. But then I realized, hey, this doesn't give me the fulfillment that I thought I would get. This is where a person starts thinking, what more do I need in my life? Do I need something? That's where a person starts exploring something else. So if we consider the human heart, there are philosophers who say that there is a God-sized hole in the human heart, and only God can fill this hole. Now we can put many other things in that hole, try to fill it. That we can try to get a lot of wealth in our bank accounts, we can get a lot of jewelry on our body, we can put a lot of food into our body, we can try to fill that hole with 100 other things, but only God can fill this hole in the heart. Now this is where a person starts turning towards God, not just because God will give me what is desirable for me, but God himself is desirable. They're two different things. Now we have two different visions of God. God, when we are looking at him from the augmenting perspective, is is the giver of the desirable. Hmm? That he is the giver of the desirable. But here, when we are talking about the complementing perspective, here idea is he is himself desirable. There may be other things which are desirable also, but it is he who is also desirable. Not only desirable, we could say to some extent essential. Now, without him in my life, there is something which is missing, which cannot be provided by anything else. And in one sense, this is what some of you talked about as the difference between humans and animals. In the soul in human body and animal body is the same, but the soul is not evolved sufficiently in animal bodies. And that's why animals, in their experience of life, don't feel this God sized hole missing in their hearts. But we humans do feel that at some time or the other. And now, for some people, when they fulfill one desire and it doesn't give them fulfillment, then instead of investigating, okay, why did this desire not fulfill? They may start pursuing a second desire, and a third desire, and a fourth desire. And they keep going on that treadmill, then they will just try to fill this God-sized hole with some other things in life. Now, although they will not be fulfilled by that, but they'll keep trying, keep trying. But at some particular time, a person starts thinking, maybe I need something else in my life. So this is where God is seen as a distinct reality whose presence, connection with whom we need for the fulfillment of our hearts. So that's why some people may ask, okay, you go to the satsang, you do this mantra chanting. Now, many of you are probably high worth individuals. So you can say in 1 hour, if you work in an office or a company, you can say in 1 hour I earn this many thousand rupees or this. Could say, but you're spending 1 hour on chanting or 2 hours on chanting. You're spending so much time on going to satsang. What are you getting out of it? Now, when a person at the previous augmenting level, that person will say that, okay, if I spend this 1 hour on chanting, my brain becomes clearer, and my other time I can earn more in that. Okay, that's also one way of looking at it. But at this level, when a person starts complimenting, he says, there are things that money can't provide. Now, making money is important. There's no denying that. But it is not the only important thing in life. And this is the stage where, at the stage of complementing, a person starts pursuing God as a separate reality. Because that connection with God itself gives me a sense of satisfaction, a sense of stability, a sense of solidity or security in my life that does not come by anything else. And when we seek this level of complementing, this is where actually serious spiritual life begins. Because here we are interested in God for God's sake. Previously, we were interested in God for what God gives us. So now augmenting is also good. Looking at God from the augmenting perspective is also good. But seeing God from a complementing perspective is better. So we could say that this is like a incremental staircase approach. So in our journey to God, we consider this to our journey toward God. The first stage is augmenting. We start understanding that God will help me gain what is desirable, or God will protect me from what is undesirable. If I'm having some trouble, God will save me from that. The second step is complementing, where the idea is God is himself desirable as a separate reality. And this is the stage where our faith in God does not depend on the fulfillment of our desires or on our protection from dangers. I was in an American university and I was talking with, and I was giving a class, and after that, one boy came to me and he said, I am currently an atheist. Okay, no, he said, I am presently an atheist. I said, okay, what do you mean presently? He said, in the last 3 months, I've changed from theism to atheism 7 times. Oh, really? Okay, I said, what happened? So, why is that? He said that I pray to God. If he fulfills my desire, I believe in him. If my prayer is not fulfilled, then I stop believing in him. So then I said that actually the existence of God is independent of the fulfillment or non-fulfillment of your prayers, isn't it? If God doesn't exist, he doesn't exist. Whether your prayers are fulfilled or not. If he exists, he exists. Whether our prayers are fulfilled or not. So quite often for us, when we are at the augmenting level or not yet come to the complementing level, our faith is shaky. Because if the whole purpose of God's existence, not the purpose of, at least we may think that way, the purpose of God's existence is to solve my problems, to fulfill my desires. So if he's not doing that, then what is the point of his even existing? He might as well not exist. So, or even if he exists, why should I worship him? Why should I care for him? So at the augmenting level, we don't really, our faith in God is not very strong. It is very dependent on externals. Now it's natural. If something terrible happens in our life, there will be questions in our life. Why is this happening? Where is God in all this? Those kind of questions are natural. But having those questions is one thing, and just rejecting belief in God is another thing, or rejecting our connection with God is another thing. Once we come to the complementing level, we understand that life will have ups and downs. But in spite of all these ups and downs, God is an independent reality. And my connection with God has intrinsic value to it, not extrinsic value. Extrinsic value is what God provides me. Intrinsic value is the connection with God itself is satisfying. Just no matter what else is happening in my life, I come in front of my deities, or I go to a temple, I'll just chant I do some kirtan, I chant some Vishnu Sahasranam, I chant some Hare Krishna mantra, and I feel peaceful. I feel peaceful even if my problem is solved or it is not solved. So at the level of augmenting, I talked about the desirable side, but look at the problem side also. Both things are there. We look for release from problems. We look for God as a person who will provide us release from problems. But when we come to the level of complementing, we start seeing that God can provide us relief amid problems. That the problems might still be there, but I can experience relief even while the problem is going on. So this is a higher level of consciousness. So when we come to the complementing level, we understand that ups and downs are a part of life. And we don't expect or demand that because God is there in my life, because I'm worshipping God, so my life should not have any ups and downs. Our life will still have ups and downs. But we won't go so much up and down with every with the ups and downs of life. What does that mean? Let me say, our life will have ups and downs. Kabhi khushi, kabhi gum, as they say. Now, for some people, when these ups and downs come, they just go all the way up and all the way down. So, okay, my tablet cannot go that much up. Okay. So the idea is, and when something good happens, oh, this is the best thing in the world. And something bad happens, my life is over. Not only life, the world is going to end now. So we often end up both exaggerating the good and exaggerating the bad. And often this is what creates a lot of instability in our life. So to the extent we go up when something good happens, to the extent we'll go down when bad things happen. because we are so caught in the emotions associated with that thing. But when we start growing spiritually, say, when we start becoming spiritually stabler, when we come to the level of complementing. Now, this up and down will be there for us if we are at the augmenting level. And it will be definitely there if we are not even at the augmenting level. That means you have no connection with God. But then, as we start coming to the complementing level, then we start becoming stabler. There'll be a little up and a little down, but it will not be so much. Yeah, I'm concerned. So you could say at this level, we are concerned but not threatened. So, okay, say, you know, I was working in a particular job and I lost the job. That's definitely a matter of concern. If somebody lost job, they are not concerned about it. Then we should be concerned about them. It's an important part of life. We cannot be artificially just unconcerned about these things. But it's one thing to feel concerned, it's another thing to feel threatened. At this level, we often feel threatened. Yes, and this is the issue. I have to tackle this issue. And let me use my intelligence. Let me pray. Let me see what I can do about it. So concern has to be there. But when we feel threatened, we just feel like I've been knocked down completely. I've been destroyed. So at the level of complementing, because we have something solid apart from the material thing that we are connecting with. So material ups and downs don't affect us so much. So they're not the material ups and so it's like almost, let's put it this way over here. Say if I'm here, say if I am here, then this is say my material life and this is my spiritual life. So now in the material life, there are ups and downs. But if my spiritual life is growing, if my spiritual connection with Krishna is increasing, then what will happen is the material ups and downs will not trouble me so much. If material life is all that I have, if the only thing I think of value in my life is my bank account, something happens to that, then I'll feel it's the end of my world. Yeah, my bank account is important, no doubt. But there are other things that are important also. God is there. God is the ultimate reality in my life. So, and I say, so basically, here how it works is that when we are just starting spiritual life, we think spiritual life is important, but material life is the most important thing. So basically, here we may think that no, this is like 5 lakhs, and this is like 5 rupees. Okay, spiritual life is good to do something nice, but I think material life is really important. But as we keep growing, we start realizing that actually this is 5 lakhs and this is 5 rupees. Now, 5 rupees is also important. It is not that we have money to throw away. But as we grow spiritually, we start understanding that my spiritual side is actually the most important side. So it's not so much devaluation of our material side as it is valuation of our spiritual side. So if 5 rupees is all that I have and somebody is stealing 5 rupees for me, I'll fight with my life for it. But if I have, say, I have 5 rupees in my pocket and I have 5 lakh rupees in a vest under my clothes, somebody is stealing 5 rupees from me. As long as there's a 5 lakh rupees, I'm not going to fight with my life to protect the 5 rupees. Okay, it's lost. Not such a big thing. I'll get it back. So the material ups and downs don't affect us so much because we have something else that we can hold on to. So this is the idea of our spiritual life complementing. Complementing means it gives us something else, a source of stability, a source of satisfaction. And that brings me to the last part. What is the last part? T. Oh, good. Now T is transcending. Transcending means This is the level. So earlier I said that if I'm here, we consider, okay, material things are desirable, but God is also desirable. God is also important in my life. Hmm? This is the level of complementing. But from here, we will eventually come to the level God is the most desirable. Hmm? God is the most desirable. So that's why I said incrementing. This was five. There was 5 lakh, and this was 5 lakh, and this was 5. Material life was 5 lakhs, and spiritual life was 5. But as we move forward, spiritual life is the most important. And then finally, we come to the level. This is the level where we need to be by the time when we are going to die. God is the only desirable thing. Ultimately, God and our relationship with God is the only thing that matters. So we need to come to this level of realization by the time of death. This is where we transcend material things. That when we transcend, that doesn't mean we don't value them. We understand they had value during the course of my life. But at the time of my death, we are all going to die sometime or the other. At that time, how much we have in our bank account is not going to make any difference. Yes, if somebody is prematurely sick, and maybe with money we can prevent premature death, so then we can take some treatment. But eventually, death is going to come upon everyone. And at that time, how much we have in our bank account is not going to count. What is going to count is how much is our connection with Krishna. We could say how much is our spiritual bank account, how much is our bhakti towards Krishna. Krishna is the only desirable reality. That at that time, nothing else matters. Nama bina kichu nahi ko aara tribhuvan jagatamaj, chauda jagatamaj. That there is nothing else in the holy name of the Lord. That is the only thing that matters. Krishna is the only thing that matters. Now, this is transcending. Now, this is a very advanced level of spiritual realization. And there are many saints who are at this level, even at the in the early stages of their life, and they just don't care for anything material. Now, most of us are not at that level, and we shouldn't artificially pretend to be at that level. But when we encounter such saints, they don't care for anything material at all because they have their connection with God, with Krishna. Then the association of such saints actually gives us the conviction that this is for real. So God, at this level, we understand that God is not just real, but He is what you can say realer than reality. What I mean by this is that what we experience right now is real. This is our reality. But there is some reality far more than that. And that is more real, that is enduringly real. So this is the stage. If we come to, many of you mentioned that the purpose of life is to say becomes liberator of the cycle of birth and death. You want to come to that level, if you want to get there, antakale chamameva smaran muktva kalevaram. When we remember Krishna at the time of death, at that time we'll attain. So what is that remembrance? It is not just it is not just utterance. It's not that somebody lives a materialistic life and when they feel okay, I've enjoyed enough, they take a gun, they put a gun on their head. Hare Krishna. I remembered Krishna, I'll go back to Krishna. No, it doesn't work like that. You can't trick God. The point is, first of all, not just utterance, it is remembrance. It is not just utterance. Utterance can definitely help in remembrance, but remembrance. And that remembrance of God, how? Remembrance that God is the supremely desirable reality. God is the only thing that matters ultimately. God is the most important thing in my life. When we come to that level, that is when we attain God. Now, of course, Krishna is merciful. Even if we don't come to this level, Krishna, if even by the time of death we come to the level where we understand that Krishna is the most desirable, even if we don't come to the level of Krishna is the only desirable reality, see, Krishna doesn't want us to stay away from him. Krishna wants us to come back to him. But Krishna doesn't want to force us to be back to him. If we desire the things of this world and somehow Okay, we utter the name of Krishna and Krishna takes us back to him also. We'll go to the spiritual world, and in the spiritual world, everybody is, having a wonderful time with Krishna. But in the spiritual world, we're asking, okay, what is the cricket score? What is the stock prices? What is the political news? Who won the election? Now, if those are the desires that we have, those are what are we have those desires, then we'll be out of place in the spiritual. So at least to go back to Godhead, to go back to Krishna, we need to come to the level of Krishna is the most desirable. So if we can come to the level of Krishna is the only desirable, that is great. But that is a very rare level of realization. But even okay, I still have desire for this or that, but my desire for Krishna is the most. If we come to that level, then that is when we transcend material existence. Now, transcending is itself a very advanced stage, and it is God by whose mercy we are able to transcend. So we practice bhakti or we practice spiritual life because ultimately material life is temporary. Everything that we achieve in life will be taken away at the time of death. Now, in general, this is an important realization to have, at least to remember. But we cannot go to the level of transcending prematurely. We have to go to it gradually. Sometimes some people say, okay, if you want to become serious about your spiritual life, think about it. Think that you may die today. Well, okay, that can be helpful. But I'll make two last points before I conclude. We have to take I'm saying that take an incremental approach, augmenting, complementing, transcending. Why? Now, transcending is also important, but if we start talking about transcending prematurely, oh, everything in this world is temporary, death can come anytime, everything can be lost, just focus on God. It doesn't work for most people because while death can come at any time, it is not necessary that death will come at every time. And we also have to live in this world if death doesn't come. So I was in Australia, in Perth, and there I was giving a class. After that, when Mataji came in, she talked with me, a young woman. She said that, I am seeing a psychologist, and he has told me that, you stop hearing these Bhagavad classes. This is psychologically damaging for you. I said, okay, but he said that I heard some of your talks online. I visited a spiritual scientist, so I felt that you could give me a rational explanation. Otherwise, people will. I told another devotee, he said, just give up the psychologist. He said. So I said, why did psychologists say that? What exactly happened? So she said that it was since her childhood, she had a lot of issues with fear, anxiety. Now she was in a home where suddenly the roof of the other side collapsed, and nobody died, but that created a great fear of death for her. And anytime a loud noise would come or any kind of thing would happen, which could sudden danger, that would paralyze her with fear. And over the years, she recovered. She became quite psychologically sturdy. And then she started coming to the temple, hearing about spiritual classes. And she started practicing bhakti also. But then she attended one class by some devotee uh, whose whole class was on the theme of how death can come at any time. And therefore, we should become serious about spiritual life. And not only did he speak that, he had got nowadays on social media you can get compilation of anything. So there's a compilation of about 50 scenes where people had died at the most normal of times. Somebody just in the is shopping in a mall and they just come to pay the bill and suddenly they get a heart attack and die. Somebody is driving a car and they again get a brain hemorrhage and their car goes out of control and then they die. And now one after another, 50 of those images are showed in the temple class. And when I saw that, it just triggered everything that had come from the past. And she said, I just became paranoid. I became completely fearful. I couldn't function anymore. And then I had to see a psychologist. When I saw the psychologist, he told me that you have to stop hearing. So I said, Yeah, I said, he's not wrong. What he is saying is not that he's against Bhagavad Gita. He's saying you cannot be hearing these kind of classes. So now it's not that yes, death can come anytime. That is true, and we should be aware of that. But the Krishna doesn't want to us to come to him because of fear. No, he wants to come him to come to us out of love, not because nothing else is working. Like suppose you know a boy proposes to a girl, please marry me, and the girl asks, why do you want me to marry? She says, because every other girl I proposed to, she took out a sandal and beat me up. Now that is not the most flattering of proposals, isn't it? So like that, if we say, I want to worship God, why? Because everything else is all temporary, everything else is miserable, everything else is beating me up. Well, okay, that's okay. At least God is happy that we're coming to Him. But in such a situation, say if the girl accepts the boy's proposal, that shows the girl's love for the boy, not the boy's love for the girl. Isn't it? The girl cares for him so much that even if he is coming to her as a last alternative, she's accepting it. The boy's love for the girl is, okay, even if there are many other girls, still I want to choose you. So we want to come to God not out of fear. That could be one motivation, but that should not be the sole motivation. So the point I was making is, you may have heard about these three modes: sattva, rajas, and tamas. So in tamas, basically, uh, tamas is the mode of lethargy, of confusion, of darkness. Rajas is the mode of hyperactivity. So these are basically three gears in which our mind operates. So tamas is associated with lethargy, lack of clarity. This is hyperactivity. You want to fix things, do this, do that, do that. Is associated with clarity. The three modes. So now everything that we perceive in life can be seen in the three modes. So now consider death. Now, if we consider death, how will death be processed? If somebody is having some tamasic influence, the thought of death will cause them total fear paralysis. They will just be overwhelmed. Oh, I'm going to die. What is the point of? I don't want to do anything at all. The technical word for this is paranoia. Hmm? Paranoia is persecution complex. A person feels constantly something is going to bad is going to happen. Something bad is going to happen. Now we are not meant to live in fear. In fact, that is not the way to live at all. So somebody tamoguna telling them to transcend the world, it's not going to work. They're only going to, if you tell them life is miserable, okay. No, there's one atheistic philosopher who whose first part is a two-part conclusion. His first part was very similar to Bhagavad Gita. He says, life is miserable. And the more you try to enjoy life, the more it becomes miserable. But the second, this is somewhat similar to Bhagavad Gita philosophy. Bhagavad Gita is much more. But the second part, he said, therefore, the only philosophical question worth asking is whether to commit suicide today or tomorrow. So, for somebody who has no idea of spiritual life, they think spiritual life is a fantasy. And you tell them material life is full of misery, and tell them what is the point of living only. So, in Tamoguna, a person can't really, at that time, they have to be talked about augmenting only. Tell them transcending, it just doesn't make any sense to them. So, death will simply cause fear. And if somebody in Rajoguna is there, for them, if they talk about death, there'll be feverish enjoyment. I was in Kolkata recently, going to Mayapur, I saw an ad. The ad said, enjoy before you become a dirty old man. That means we are all going to grow old, but we are all going to grow old, we are going to die. Therefore, what is the solution? Enjoy before you do that. Not to think of something eternal. So Rajoguna will pursue things like that. In Tamoguna, in Sattvaguna, when we hear about death, we'll ask the question, what exists beyond death? This question will not even register for most people. That's why for people who are in Rajoguna and Tamoguna, augmenting is the level at which we need to introduce. For them, if we talk about complementing, it doesn't make any sense, and transcending, it won't make any sense at all. It can backfire. So that's why I said an incremental approach. So here we think of complementing, and eventually, as we move forward, Sattva to leads to Suddha Sattva, that's where we'll talk about transcending. So now, this was one point I was going to make, that we can't artificially jump to the level of transcending. It is important to know that spiritual life helps us understand God is the only reality that matters ultimately. But we can't jump to that. And the second point I'll talk about is that I mentioned that I'll talk about this difference or similarity between spirituality and religion. And why that is important in this discussion. There is a whole group of people who call themselves as SBNR. Has anyone heard this word here? Okay. This is simple. Spiritual, yes, but not religious. So many people like this. So, for example, if I'm going to companies and talking, they say we want a spiritual talk. We don't want a religious talk. So now, why is this? Because now words have different meanings, and certain words have acquired certain meanings. So for most people, they associate spirituality with being broad-minded, with being open to experience. They associate spirituality with peacefulness, kindness, forgiveness. And they say, I want to be calmer in my life. I want to be more forgiving. I want to be gentler. So they generally associate spirituality with these things. And everybody wants these things. But religion, they associate with primarily two things: dogmas and rituals. Dogmas means you have to believe this. And rituals means you have to do this. And these things many people don't like. Now, dogmas and rituals mean don't ask any questions. And rituals, why should we do this? Oh, that's because that's what our parents have done. That's what our grandparents have done. That's why we should do this. Now, for many of us in our generation, that reason might work. But for our children, we should do it because that's what our parents and grandparents have done. Okay, let them keep doing it. I don't want to do it. So when people think of dogmas and rituals in this way, now this can also lead to one big thing is fanaticism or narrow-mindedness. So people often associate religion with narrow-mindedness. And there is a lot of religion which unfortunately is like this. In religion, there are two things. There is exclusivism and there is extremism. Both of these are forms of fanaticism. Now, exclusivism is more in the domain of beliefs, and extremism is more in terms of actions. So what does it mean? Say, for example, in some religions, there is this idea that our way is the only way. That it's like we have exclusive access to God. If you're not following us, if you're not believing in my God, then you're not going to go to God. Not only you're not going to go to God, you're going to go to hell. So that's exclusivism. Now, most thinking people will feel, if God is really that great, why should there be only one way to him? So this still narrow-minded itself is a problem. But there are some people who go from exclusivism to extremism. They say, you're not only are you going to go to hell, we'll help you get there faster. So because of this idea, because religion is associated with dogmas and rituals, and they often breed fanaticism, many people say, I don't want to be religious. But if we really go deep within them, okay, you don't want dogmas, you want dogmas or rituals, but everybody's hankering for some higher experience in life. So what I talked about, augmenting, complementing, transcending, all those are something which is accessible for all of us. And it is not only accessible for all of us, it is something which everybody seeks at some or the other stage in their lives. So when Prabhupada was guiding one of his disciples about how to do college outreach. This is in America, but I think it applies everywhere. Prabhupada said the worst thing that you can do in college outreach is present Krishna consciousness as a set of rules. He just said, do this, don't do this. That will just not work. Why should I follow these rules? So now, if we consider, Prabhupada said present Krishna consciousness as a science. Now, what does science mean? In science, there are two aspects. There is theory and then there is experiment. So similarly, in spirituality, there are two things. There is philosophy and there is religion. Religion essentially involves practice. So you could call it practice, you could call it religion. Religion is actually meant to be a set of practices that give us realization of what is taught in the philosophy. Just like experiments help us to prove or disprove what the theory is telling. Similarly, when we present religion, yes, religion means okay, we chant a particular mantra, we don't eat particular kinds of foods. But when we are telling this, don't just tell this is what we do because this is our tradition, this is our culture. That will not work for people. We need to ourselves understand the philosophy and share that philosophy with others. Okay, this is the view of the world. And if in this worldview, now how do we know does God exist, does soul exist? Okay, let's accept it as it's a possibility. Okay, that's the philosophy gives us some rationale for at least entertaining that possibility. And then the religion is meant to be a set of practices which help us experience the reality of those things. So, for example, if there is a theory that there is a soul and there's God, and when the soul and God are linked together, then we experience sublime satisfaction. And then when we chant and we experience the satisfaction, then we start realizing, okay, yeah, this makes sense. It's working for me. So Krishna talks about this twofold aspect in 9.2. He says, this is Raja Vidya, this is the king of knowledge, but then he says this is Pratyaksha Avagamam. It is something which you can experience directly. How? By practice. So there may be many people who say, I don't want to be involved in the religion. And that's okay. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are atheistic or anti-religious. It's just that they have a particular idea of religion. So if he presents Krishna consciousness as a set of propositions and a set of practices, rather than a set of dogmas and rituals, that, okay, this is one way of looking at the world. That your identity doesn't end with your biology. There is more to you than simply your biology. And we offer people that worldview and give them a set of practices. And everybody can, if they actually just open-mindedly explore it, they can find that the Krishna conscious worldview and the Krishna conscious practices, they add value to their life. And when they add value, they'll naturally keep moving forward by their own initiative. So this is how everyone at whatever level they might be, they can be enriched by spirituality. They can be enriched at the level of at whatever level they are at, according to the ACT acronym. So I'll summarize what I discussed today. We talked about why practice spiritual life, or what is the importance of spiritual life. I started with the acronym ACT. What was A? Augmenting. So augmenting means that whatever I think is desirable, so this may be material things that I think desirable, but there is an obstacle in that path. And today the obstacle is the mind. And that obstacle can be overcome. So whatever we think is desirable, we can pursue that. And this is the reason why there is the resilience of the belief in God. Why that resilience is there? Resilience of God is, why has God not died? Because technology may have provided external things, but internally people still seek peace of mind. and spirituality is what provides that. So at this stage, what I think desirable, God can help me get there. My spirituality can help me get there. What the second point? Complementing. The complementing means that I am here and I have my own desirable thing, but there's something else that is desirable. We understand that inside all of us there is a God-sized hole that no one can fulfill. And here is when we realize that fulfilling desires, it doesn't lead to fulfillment of the heart. So is there something more to life? So it's like, so I have my material side and I have my spiritual side. And at this level, what happens is life's ups and downs will come. But amid those life's ups and downs, we will become steady. Because we have another side to hold on to. That's the complementing part. What is the third part? Transcending. So transcending is where we understand that ultimately Krishna is the only thing that matters. Because ultimately everything in this world is temporary. So for us, if we can come to the level of transcending, that's excellent. But it's an incremental approach. Incremental approach means that God matters. First level is when we are accepting, at the A level, God matters as a giver of my desirable things. That is, God matters extrinsically. But here we understand God matters intrinsically. And God matters for who He is, not just what He gives me. And He is where God matters most, or God matters only. That is the level we want to come to. The last point I discussed was two obstacles that can be there. That is, one is premature transcending. That if we try to say that everything else is temporary, I talked about how talking about death can, instead of inspiring spirituality, can trigger paralysis, can trigger paranoia. So we have to be at the level that we are at. Death, it should increase our spirituality. Talking thought of death or thinking about death. But if that is not happening, then don't go in that direction. If it is leading to, this is good, but if it is leading to paranoia, if it is leading to panic, fear, then that is something to be avoided. So, and then I talked about spirituality and religion, how they're not the same. And people see religion as a set of dogmas and rituals. And that's why they don't want it. But spirituality is actually a transformative science. It has these two limbs, philosophy and religion. And if we present it that way, then people who have some reservations can also overcome it and move toward being enriched by developing their spiritual side. Thank you very much. Hare
Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhu. It's a wonderful session. So initially when I heard the word spiritual scientist, I thought it's an oxymoron. Now I understand the meaning of it, basically. And today what happened is not spiritual scientist, but spiritual surgery happened, basically. Open our brains and take care of the gray matter. Thank you so much, Prabhu. It's a beautiful session. It's much needed session. I know చాలా మంది తెలుగు ఇంగ్లీష్ లో సెషన్ ఉండడం నాకు అర్థం కాలేదేమో అమ్మ మనం మళ్ళీ దీన్ని మరో రోజు కంప్లీట్ గా ఈ సెషన్ డిస్కస్ చేద్దాము మన సత్సంగంలోని సో ట్రై టు రిపీట్ వాట్ వి లిసన్ టుడే ఇన్ అవర్ సత్సంగ్ బికాజ్ ఇది ఒక శ్లోకం ఇవే శ్లోకాలు మనం నేర్చుకుంటున్న శ్లోకాలు కూడా అందువల్ల దీన్ని మళ్ళీ మనం రిపీట్ చేసుకుందాం సో ఎవరికైనా ఏమైనా క్వశ్చన్స్ ఉంటే ప్రభు తీసుకుంటారు
you mentioned about this act. So is it a human tendency, or if it is a human tendency, then why everybody in this world are not going towards spirituality when they are experiencing all these things? Or maybe through years, or if it is a human tendency, then why not many people are going towards spirituality?
Okay, so why are more people not going towards spirituality? Well, there are 2, 3 reasons. First is that not everybody has come to even the level of realizing. So, see, what has happened is if society becomes more and more materialistic, then even if a person has some spiritual interest or inclination, if there is no one around them who is pursuing that, then that will just get neglected. That will also get sometimes suppressed, not just neglected but suppressed. So it's like some people say that if some young people start talking about death and temporariness of life and things like that, don't think too much. Thinking is dangerous for you. Well, yeah, there is some truth to that. That is, if somebody is thinking and they're not having some wisdom to guide their life, then that thinking can actually make them feel pessimistic, hopeless, and that's not very healthy also. So basically, one of the association does not foster spirituality. So you could say negative association. And that's why Srila Prabhupada said that it is our responsibility to at least provide the opportunity for spirituality to everyone. Now, whether they take it up or not is up to them. So, but that's why we try to distribute books, we try to organize programs, we try to invite people. So they may just not know about it. That's from a more circumstantial perspective. Now, in general, for everyone, especially in human life, at least at some time or the other, they do get the question, what really matters in life? What really matters? It may be because of the death of a loved one, it may be because of some other loss and something which they consider very valuable. Or it can be like, the spiritual spark can be triggered by anything from dissatisfaction to devastation and everything in between. Dissatisfaction is, I've achieved so much in my life, but why am I feeling something missing in my life? And devastation is, what I thought was important, it's all gone. What is all this? What matters in life? So either the spiritual spark can be triggered in any of these questions. But sometimes, generally for most people, it happens sometime in their life. So when the spiritual spark is triggered, at that time they get a spiritual opportunity. That's the perfect. So now sometimes the spiritual spark is, if you consider a person's life journey, sometimes the spiritual spark is triggered here, and then they get the spiritual opportunity later. And when they get it, they just grab it. Just grab it at that time. But that spiritual spark may not be triggered. For some people, it may be like that. They get the spiritual spark, spiritual opportunity here. But for them, through their own life, the spiritual spark is triggered here. Then at that time, they will start exploring the spiritual. They will tap the opportunity, they look for the opportunity. So that's why if somebody doesn't have that spiritual spark right now, then we invite 100 people for program, somebody comes for one session, and then they don't seem to be very interested. Then at that time, we shouldn't push them too much. We don't guilt them into coming on, keeping on. But okay, let them at the very least feel, yeah, these are nice people. What they say, it makes some sense. Maybe it's not for me right now, but it makes sense. So when later that spiritual spark is triggered, then they will associate, they will look for devotees. So now it's also possible. Generally, this requires a very strong association. That the spiritual opportunity itself, you could say, triggers the spiritual spark. That means sometimes some devotees their association is so powerful that just by being with that person, people want to know, what is all this about? I want to know more about it. So now association can activate a pre-existing spark, or association itself can trigger the sparks. But this is relatively rare. It happens. So basically, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur calls this as Balain Utpadita. Balain Utpadita means by the power of association, Bala, by the power of association, Utpadita, that which is produced. So the spiritual spark is produced by the power of association. But in this case, it is more Swabhaviki. Swabhaviki, by the natural course of life, the spiritual spark is activated in a person. The both are possible. Any other questions? If somebody is religious, convert them to spirituality. Well, generally two things. Being religious is itself good. That means they have some kind of faith, they have some kind of practices. So what we try to do is, two things are required in general for going to philosophy, religious to be spiritual. One is get some philosophical understanding. Get some philosophical understanding. Many people may do, as I said, do something because that's what our parents taught me and that's what it feels good to me. And that's nice. They're doing it. So they get some level of philosophical understanding. Then that brings a certain level of depth to the spiritual practice. See, when somebody is practicing religion, can be practiced simply as a cultural or traditional activity. But religion can also be practiced as a transcendental or spiritual activity. It depends. What do I mean by this? And why are we practicing this religion? Because that's what our parents did, that's what our community does. So that's fine if somebody is doing it. But these are two very different levels of practices. When somebody is practicing it as a transcendental or spiritual activity, that means they are pursuing something higher in life. They understand. So philosophy gives them some understanding that there is something higher in life. So to some extent, have some philosophical discussions to help them get some philosophical understanding. And the second is that try to see if their practices can be a little more systematized. Somebody might just do some things because of some sentiment. They do it whenever they feel something. But spiritual practice means there's sadhana. Sadhana means there's discipline. It's like if I want to, say when I'm taking a tonic, I take it, like I said, the first is augmenting, spirituality is like a tonic. Right? Tonic means when I feel down, I take it. When I don't feel down, there's no need to take it. But here, when we grow serious in our spiritual life, we understand this material consciousness, it is like a disease for us. I have to rise to spiritual consciousness. It's a medicine. I don't take it when it feels good to me. I take it regularly. So basically, the journey from religion to spirituality, you could say it will have two rails. One is some amount of philosophical understanding and some amount of regulated practice, sadhana. So when these two are there, then a person can rise from religion towards spirituality. Thank you. There's a question.
This question is based on yesterday's topic and today's topic clubbed together, because I'm in that phase. This is my personal thing, what I'm facing. So the thing is, earlier, as today's class says, might be I'm God conscious, augmentation phase, where I used to pray for the God for the material desire. So I used to ask for this benefit or that benefit. So I would get satisfaction if I get it. If I don't get the satisfaction over the period, I used to go through some certain quotes where say that there would be a right time for the right thing to be done. So I get satisfied myself. So after coming to this ISKCON meeting, probably from 2020, I've been into this meeting. So after that, I've been told that instead of asking for the material desires, we should ask for I should get into the Krishna consciousness. So now yesterday's topic has come into my picture that after getting into this mission, maybe from 2, 3 months, I'm getting much tense. The thing is, I have one particular desire which I have to fulfill it. So that is going in my mind that I have to ask Krishna regarding this material desire. But at the same time, the teachings what I have been taking from past 3 years that we shouldn't ask for the direct material desire. So then I have a big question that what should I pray for? Earlier I used to pray and then later I came to a stage, I'll pray and God will handle it. Now I am in a situation because my material desire is not being like successful. So that is hindering my practice. So to be sincere. So it always says that should I ask this question to Krishna? Should I not ask and leave it to him? So shall I accept what he gives it to me? So that is the stress feeling I am having. And now I feel that from augmentation phase, I've come to the complementary phase, what you have discussed. So from this, I have to move forward to the transcendental phase. So that in that process, what suggestion could you give it to me? That would be really a helpful factor.
Thank you for asking this question. It's an important question, I would say. See, there are two things over here. One is when we are talking about devotion, there is our aspiration. Aspiration means that is where we want to be. And there is our reality, where we are. So we want to go from where we are to where we would like to be, the level that we want to be. So the level we are at right now, for us, most of us, material things do matter for us. And we cannot artificially deny that. It's like, if I consider, see, we have to become, there has to be devotion before there can be pure devotion. So, and devotion means basically a connection of hearts. Like, so if there is something very prominent on our heart right now, weighing on our heart, and if we say, okay, we call that as material and say, I won't connect this with Krishna, then what is going to happen is a major part of our heart is going to stay unconnected with Krishna. So if I consider, say, this is my heart, and here there is Krishna. Now, if presently some material concern is weighing on my heart prominently, if I decide that I'm not going to pray at all to Krishna for this material thing, then from a large part of my heart, Krishna is going to stay disconnected. And then I'm going to pray very deeply. So the point is that when I talk about here, see, this is the level where we say Anya Bhilashita Shunyam. That have no other desire, only pray to Krishna for Krishna's sake. That is pure devotion. But the same Bhakti Rasamrita, the same book which talks about this level, it also tells us Yena Kena Prakarena Mana Krishna Nivesha. Yena Kena Prakarena means somehow or other fix the mind on Krishna. So one is fix the mind on Krishna with pure devotion. The other is somehow or the other fix the mind on Krishna. So now somehow or the fix the mind on Krishna is also included within the ambit of bhakti. So if we have some material desires, which are very strong for us. Now, personally, I find word material desire a little insufficient for describing the whole spectrum of desires that we have. So, why is that? Say, for example, how many of you are Asians? Everyone. But how many of you think you are Asians? you know, that's a reality, but it doesn't describe who we are, isn't it? Because I'm an Indian, not only I'm a South Indian, I'm North Indian, I'm this. So it's a, yes, Asian is like in America when you go, people say, "Are you Asian?" You're okay. It's like I never thought of myself as Asian. It's too big a category to describe anything. Asian includes Chinese, it includes Filipino, it includes Japanese, it includes Arabic people, it includes so many people. So, like that, when we say material desires, it is such a huge category. It's like using Asians as a category. Why? In material desires, there can be sattva, there can be rajas, and there can be tamas. So now, in material desires, somebody when alcoholic and they pray. There is one, and then European philosopher, he said, the taste of wine is the proof that God loves us. If God didn't exist, how could something as delicious as wine exist? So now the desire for wine, you could say it's a tamasic desire. It's a desire in the mode of ignorance. Now there are tamasic desires, there are rajasic desires. Rajasic desires, I want more and more money, I want more and more power, I want this, I want more. There could be sattvic desires. Sattvic desire, you could say, is that say if somebody's family member is sick and they want the well-being of their family member. Now you could call that as a material desire if you want it. But that is not the same as the desire to eat more food or the desire to have more wine to drink. It's a relatively more selfless desire. It's a desire for the welfare of someone other than oneself. It's a desire for something more than one's own pleasure. So we could say that our desires can fall in a category. And in general, if you consider it with respect to devotion, generally tamasic desires are anti-devotional. And these have to be, as many as possible, given up. Then rajasic desires generally are non-devotional. They are desire for wealth and power. That doesn't really help much directly in our devotion. Sattvic desires are often pro-devotional desires. So this is a characterization that is available within our own tradition. So yes, now we say we want to give up material desires. Yes, certainly tamasic desires we want to give up. Now we would like to give up rajasic and sattvic also, but rajasic and sattvic are not toxic to our devotion. So sometimes when we artificially try to say, I have to give up this desire or I want to connect this desire with Krishna, then it is we and our heart will stay disconnected with Krishna. So if a desire is particularly strong for us, then we can pray to Krishna for that desire. But we can also say, Krishna, I feel this is very important for me. But if that is not your plan, if you think something else is important to me, please give me the intelligence to accept that, to pursue that. So if we have that attitude, then what is there is, we are expressing our heart, but we are also opening our heart to Krishna's. See, the key point is Krishna consciousness. So material desires can lead to material consciousness. But if material desires can lead to Krishna consciousness, then everything can be used in Krishna's service. So even material desires can be used in Krishna's service. So we have in our own tradition the example of Dhruva Maharaj. He went to the Lord with material desires. I want a kingdom bigger than my father's kingdom. But from there, he came to Krishna. And then he realized Krishna is what matters the most. So that's why don't focus so much on not either having material desires or not praying to Krishna with material desires. focus more on praying to Krishna. That's the most important thing. And then, if we are praying for material things, we also pray for accepting Krishna's will. And that accepting of Krishna's will is something which will ensure that we don't stay in material consciousness. In material consciousness, this desire is what I want, and that's all that I want. I don't care for anything else. So then it won't be such an obstacle.
That is what I'm doing the past few months, that I do pray him. This is my desire, but if something other plan is there, let me give the strength to accept what you have given it to me.
Yes.
So that is what I'm doing it. So I just want to get it confirmed whether it's true or something more
Yeah.
to be added.
See, thank you. That's what you're doing is perfect. No problem at all. See, when you talk about material desire, it can mean two things. Desire that disconnects us from Krishna. And if this is the meaning, then this is not what we want. But if desire that connects us with Krishna, then that is not unfavorable to bhakti. See, there is something called false renunciation. False renunciation is the idea that Falgu Vairagya is that the things that can be used to connect with Krishna, we give them up. So, for example, say right now I'm a brahmachari, but I'm using these gadgets. Now, brahmachari should not be using these gadgets. Okay, yeah, that's one way of looking at it. But if this can connect me with Krishna, I can read spiritual books on this. This can help me connect others with Krishna. Then giving up that which can connect us with Krishna is false renunciation. So if a particular desire is so important for us, then if that can make us pray to Krishna more, then what's wrong with that? And if later on, if we are accepting, Krishna, I'll accept your will. Say if somebody's loved one is in danger and they pray to Krishna, please save this. Is that really a material desire? You could call it material if you want. But the point is that it is connecting them with Krishna. It is better that they say that, okay, better that you pray to Krishna than not pray to Krishna. Isn't it? Thank you. Let me know when to stop. Okay, how many questions are there? 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3 are there. Okay, we'll try. I'll try to answer in short.
I have one question always in my mind, pestering. So, seeing you people means not only you, sir. You are high profile people and getting the spiritual spark so fast and doing things. But I'm trying still so many years, I'm not getting that spiritual spark to go to that level. Why? This is because of any previous birth problem or any. That's what I always have seen your profiles.
Well, it's difficult to say. We are all on a spiritual journey. We're all on a journey of spiritual evolution. And ultimately, we grow or we receive Krishna and we grow toward Krishna in a way that is best for us. So it is natural that we would like to grow faster and we try our best. But it's not, should I put it that? Sometimes some devotees feel very bad, say, if they came to Bhakti at the age of 40 or 50 or 60. If I had come to the age of, if I was born in a devotee family, just came at the age of 20, that would have been so nice. Well, maybe not. Suppose somebody is born in a devotee family, they might get Bhakti upbringing. But in general, everybody goes through a rebellious phase in teenage. And then that rebellious phase might have taken us away from Krishna. Who knows? So, Krishna is working in everyone's life. And Krishna is drawing everyone forward. So, we can try to analyze and see that, what can I do to grow more faster? But spiritual life is a multi-life journey. So, from where we are, if we are practicing, we are moving forward. Somebody, now our starting point in this life may be at one place, somebody else's starting point may be at another place. And if their starting point in this life is, say, ahead of us, then they'll naturally be going ahead of us. Our starting point may be at a different place, and we are moving ahead from where we are. So, the key principle is that if we practice bhakti seriously, we will move closer toward Krishna. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dhanwad Pranam, Prabhuji. Very grateful for your association in this session, Prabhuji. All good. Prabhuji, I have a similar question to how you explained on why not many people are having this spiritual mindset. So, Prabhuji, this is a very common thought in society regarding the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, is it applicable always, or how should I understand it?
Okay, so the hierarchy of needs, Maslow has given, as others have also given it, that first we need to fulfill our physical needs for survival. And then like that we move forward, and then we look for transcendence. And that is where somebody comes to spirituality. Well, there is certainly some truth in that. And if you see in the Vedic tradition also, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So a person has to have some level of dharma, artha, kama. Then they will go towards moksha. So there's an understanding that is true. And say if a person has to work for 12, 14, 16 hours just to make ends meet. And there are people who work that much because they want to earn a lot of money. That's a different thing. Some people have to just, maybe they may be laborers, they may be miners, or some places like that. People have to work that much just to make ends meet. So for them to practice spirituality would be quite difficult. So that's why in the Vedic tradition there were Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. The Brahmanas would promote spiritual welfare, but the Kshatriyas would also promote material welfare. The primary purpose of Kshatriyas was to promote material welfare in a way that would be conducive to spiritual welfare. That would make people receptive to spiritual welfare. But material welfare is also important. When the Pandavas moved from Hastinapur to Indraprastha, it was Khandoprastha, it was a barren wilderness, and they made it prosperous. And you may say it was materially prosperous, yes, but the material prosperity was good. And that's considered Krishna's mercy. And that's how many Brahmins and sages were attracted and they would grow. So yes, at one level, basic needs do need to be fulfilled. And as, say, a spiritual movement grows, now while we work at one level to share spirituality, we would also encourage people to provide for material needs of people also. Now, we ourselves may be limited in our resources, so we may not be able to ourselves do that. But, and as devotees, we are doing Annamrit, we have food for life and things like that. So we are also doing that. But for most people, it is not that the lower needs are not fulfilled and that's why they are not going toward higher needs. It is not so much because the lower needs are not fulfilled, it's more because they don't know about the higher, or they don't consider the higher to be higher. So yes, if it is the lower needs not being fulfilled, then they should be fulfilled. The Prabhupada would say that one time in a Pandal when somebody asked him that there are so many starving people, what is the use of your talking chant or chanting Hare Krishna? Prabhupada said, if you are ready to chant Hare Krishna, you just come to our temple, we'll make sure that you are paid for the rest of your life. Are you ready to chant? So there are some people who are just unwilling also. No, thank you. Last question, Mataji. Yes.
I encountered many people who say that all paths lead to the same destination. So Prabhupada gives an example that if you buy a ticket to Nagpur, you can't go reach Delhi. When I give that example to them, they say that what is your problem to Nagpur and you go to Delhi?
Okay.
Like, there are some people who follow spiritual practices saying that they will reach transcendence.
Okay. There are two different questions. Okay. Well, now, let me start with the first one, and we'll see if I can get to the second one. See, there are broadly the various religious paths in the world can be categorized into three broad categories. One is what we discussed in exclusivism. So most of the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, they fall in this category. Our way is the only way. We have exclusive access to God. Now, if you consider pendulum, the opposite of this is pluralistic. And that is what Hinduism today is often thought to be. Now, whether Hinduism today is actually reflecting the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita is a different question. But all paths are fine. But actually speaking, if you think from purely logical perspective, if all paths lead to the same goal, okay, all paths lead to God. Same goal is ultimately God, ultimately Brahman, whatever you call it. But suppose I'm an atheist, and so I believe that God doesn't exist. So if my path is right, then your path has to be wrong, isn't it? This is logically it's a problem. All paths are valid. All paths lead to the same goal. Putting it simply, B is only my path is right. Somebody not necessarily saying that. There are people who are exclusivists also. But suppose somebody is atheistic. Now, if atheist is right, then what that means is that all the paths talking about God are meaningless. So while this can seem broad-minded, this can easily seem broad-minded, but this is not actually broad-minded. This is empty-minded. We should be open-minded, but we should be so open-minded that our brain falls out. So this just doesn't make any sense that all paths lead to the same goal. How can all paths lead to the same goal? Now, this does not mean there's a in between. What you can call as inclusivism. And what the Gita says is inclusivism. 4.11 Mama Vartamanu Vartante Manushya Parthaspaksh. Now, inclusivism means that there are many paths, that's true. But those many paths should have one purpose. If they don't share a purpose, then they're not going to lead to the same goal. I'll explain what this means with an example. That if you consider, copy it?
Yes, onward.
Okay. So, if you consider, say, a mountain, at the bottom of the mountain is material consciousness, and the top of the mountain is spiritual consciousness. So now, you could say that there are many paths to go to the top of the mountain. And that is true. But that does not mean that all paths go to the top of the mountain, isn't it? Some paths may just go round and round the mountain. Some paths may go halfway and come down again. Some paths may actually go away from the mountain into the valley also. So all paths don't lead to the same goal. That's why, yes, there are many paths. So we don't say that Krishna or Krishna Bhakti is the only way. There are other religions also, there are other paths also which can also elevate people. But that does not mean all paths. That's the first point. So this is not the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, that all paths lead to the same goal. That many paths can lead to the same goal, but they have to have a common purpose. Now, as far as can somebody by sex go to spirituality? Well, it is not sex that takes one to spirituality. That this is basically in the broad Vedic school of thought. This is what I'm going to speak in today evening Sahajiism. I want to talk about that. That's why I want to speak about that. There is a path called Tantra, which says through matter you can get to spirit. Now, there is some truth to it. But the problem is that it is through certain forms of matter that are conducive to spirit. Like I talked about, material thing, there's material, sattva, rajas, tamas. There's pro-devotional, non-devotional, anti-devotional. But what some followers of Tantra hold that any form of matter can take us towards spirit. Well, that is questioned. Maybe for some people, their consciousness is so extraordinary, transcendental that it doesn't matter. But for most people, once they engage in, say, unrestricted sexuality. So the idea is that if you engage in unrestricted sexuality, eventually you will get frustrated and you look for something higher. But the problem is it doesn't happen like that. When as a person engages in more and more sexuality, all that happens is that desire becomes more and more and more. And that person doesn't look for something more than sex. That person only looks for more sex. That's what now this is what is most likely to happen. Now, in principle, there is a remote possibility of that. Where the idea is if there is fire, and if I put fuel on fire, the fire is going to grow further. But say if I have this much fire and I put a huge block of wood on it, then the block of wood may be so big that the block of wood extinguishes the fire. There is a possibility of that. But for that, two things are required. First, the fire should not be too big. And the second is the block of wood should be bigger than that fire. But if the fire is very big and the block of wood is not big enough, then that block of wood will catch fire and the fire will become much worse. So in that sense, if somebody has very little material desires and then they have excessive indulgence, then it may be possible that that excessive indulgence will lead them to such realizing of the emptiness of sexuality as a source of pleasure that they will start looking for something higher. But the possibility of that path actually leading one to spirituality is extremely rare. For most people, the fire of desire is not very small. And for most people, getting gratification so much that it will far overshadow the desire that is present. That is also not a very realistic possibility. So you could say, so Narad Muni in the 7th canto does talk about this, but he says this is not the path followed by the wise. I think the same fire example only. And you could say there's a remote possibility of that. But the real danger is that it doesn't happen. When Srila Prabhupada went to the West, there was this idea that through drugs you can go towards spirituality. Now, many of the people who came there, they are part of the counterculture in 1960s. They were actually looking for spirituality, and they were not drug addicts. They had no intention of being drug addicts. Somewhere, but these people were actually looking for spirituality, and they got into drugs because that's what they were led to be. Now, when Prabhupada came and gave them bhakti, they gave up drugs and they took up bhakti because their interest of spirituality, and they realized that through bhakti, we are getting to spirituality much more than whatever we are getting through drugs. But the vast majority of them, they got into drugs and they got trapped in drugs. And that's why the whole counterculture and the hippie movement, it degenerated eventually. George Harrison initially was a big promoter of the counterculture. And he said, oh, this is the way to explore life and with all freedom and no restriction and things like that. But when he actually came to the Haight Ashbury and other places, he saw what happened. He actually regretted. I promoted this. This is not what I wanted to promote. So in real life, it doesn't work like that. So we can whatever I said, I think that same explanation you can give to them also. Maybe in principle, there's a remote possibility, but in practice, there is a far greater danger. And if a person for whom karma is already very less, then they can just give it up. They can transcend that karma by purification. They don't have to go into gratification by that. Okay?
Demigod worship and worship of this so-called Babas and all also reach to the same destination.
Well, any kind of worship can elevate a person's consciousness to some extent. See, in worship, there is the object of worship, there is the mood of worship. Whom I am worshipping, how I am worshipping, why am I worshipping. All these three are required. We can't say only on the object of worship. Somebody might worship a particular, say, even a Baba, with a very pure mood. And if that is happening, then Krishna from within their heart will guide them toward the highest object of worship. So, if their mood of worship, or rather not moods, it's the mode of worship, how they are worshipping, why are they worshipping, and whom they are worshipping. So all three are important. So, can it lead them to the highest destination? Yeah, gradually. It may. It's not that just by worshipping that person, they'll get to God. Worshipping that person may elevate them slightly. It depends on how they are worshipping, whom they are worshipping also matters. So that's why if somebody worships devatas, that's certainly better than being a materialist or atheist. And that's why from worshipping devatas, Bahunam Janmanamante it might take. So you could say all paths lead to the same goal. Because ultimately everybody is going back to go to Krishna. But it's like, say, Krishna is here and I am here. Now there is a straight path to Krishna. Now there's a path away which also comes. But there's a long, long way. And this path can keep going further, further, further. Ultimately, every soul has to come to Krishna. But that can take many, many lifetimes. So, where that all paths ultimately lead to Krishna does not mean that all paths are equal.
So it's okay to take multiple lifetimes and reach Krishna. What is your problem? How can I help you?
If somebody says that, well, if somebody is saying that they want to take multiple lifetimes, then we can let them take multiple lifetimes. No, see, in general, we cannot push people to go faster than what they are, if not ready to go, or at least are ready to explore. It's like, suppose, sometimes we all have to push people to take up spirituality. But how much do we push? See, there has to be some interest in them. If they have not, if they're committed to their own path, then that's okay. It's like, suppose sometimes, I don't know if it happens now cars are much better, but maybe 10, 20 years ago, it would happen that if somebody's car is not starting, then they call people around and everybody pushes the car. Everybody pushes. And so now see people from outside are pushing, the person inside is moving the gears and the car starts. So like that, some people are trying to move spiritually forward and then we give them a push. But suppose somebody's pushing, people are pushing the car from outside, but the person inside has gone to sleep. Or worse, the person inside is pressing the brakes. And the people outside have to say, what is the point of pushing? Like that, when we are pushing others, if somebody is just not interested, is just interested in maybe coming up with reasons for excuses or reasons, whatever you want to say, for not taking up, then just end the encounter on a polite note, on a friendly note. Let them get some Agyan Sukruti at least. Okay, this dude is a nice person. I don't agree with them, but they're a nice person. And let them go. Krishna will guide them forward in nature. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita.